And welcome to IvyLearn Instructor Workflows, Discussions and Rubrics. My name is Kathy Long. I'm the Senior Training Specialist for the Center for Instructional Technology. Today we will be asking questions and facilitating questions in the question box, and I'll try to answer those throughout the presentation for you. So let's just jump right in there and get started by accessing our IvyLearn platform. Remember, we do recommend that you use Chrome for everything that we do now within the IvyLearn platform and also with our Google products. So here we have our dashboard, which is how we access any one of our course cards. And let's go ahead and jump into our demo course here. How many of you, if you will, just answer in the question box, feel comfortable with creating discussion boards already? Okay. All right. Well, let's start with how we create a discussion board. Yeah, it looks like it's probably a new tool for most of our participants today. So let's spend a little bit of time on discussion boards. Discussion boards are a great tool that you can use in an online course. It's one of our most frequently used tools in an online course, but you can also use discussion boards in a hybrid and a traditional class as well. Discussion boards allows every single person in the class to contribute and to discuss a certain topic. Okay, so if you think about it, if I'm teaching in a traditional classroom experience, I have one or two people who are really talkative, and then I have a few who are holding back and not wanting to discuss or talk about any major topics in front of the class. They're a little bit shy. We also have a time constraint in our traditional or hybrid sections. There's only so much time for discussion and lecture and all the things that we need to accomplish while we're teaching. So the discussion board is a great way to allow everyone to participate, everyone to communicate, and it's also done in an online manner. So we can use this in any one of our delivery formats. Now, there are a couple ways that you can add a discussion board. On our course menu, you'll see over here on the left-hand side, I could select discussions. If I scroll down just a little bit, okay, and I can go right into that discussion board area and create my discussion boards. Okay, so I can do it here from the discussions area, or if I'm using that statewide template, which I highly recommend you do, you could go into your modules area and add that discussion board as a module topic. Okay, whether you're using modules or the discussion board area, it's both going to work the same way. So let's just go ahead and jump into discussions. And you'll see this is the index view. So this shows all the discussions that are currently in my demo class. Okay, so Module 1, discussion board introductions, and they're all located here. You'll see all of the due dates, because remember, by policy, we're required now to add due dates to every assignment that we offer. The due dates control what you see on the to-do list on that open dashboard. It also controls how you see things in the grade center as well. It also populates the calendar, which helps students and faculty both stay on track with what's going on in all of their classes. So due dates are very, very important. Okay. In this discussion board area, you see I can pin a discussion. What this means is when I pin a discussion, it shows up at the top of the list of discussion boards every single time. So for example, we have our cyber cafe. This is a social area where students can go ahead and communicate with each other. And we also have this help forum where students can post questions to other people in the class and then also to their instructor as well. Okay. So how do I add a discussion? Every content area has usually this little tool, and there's a plus sign with the type of content that you're adding. So in this particular area, we're going to say plus discussion. It's going to take me into the content editor, very, very similar to what we would do in our Blackboard environment. So we give it a title. I would place my question here in my content editor. Okay, so I can insert my question. Remember, you want to ask questions that are not yes and no. You want them to really think about something, respond back to it, whether it's a debate or a case study, or even if you want them to watch a video and then discuss what the topic was. All of these are eligible options for you in the discussion board. Okay. So insert my question here, or if I wanted to put a video in and have them talk about that, maybe what they learned, maybe a TED Talk, for example, on time management, I could select that and embed that video from here. External tools, I could look up something in YouTube. Okay, so maybe I'm going to select this, how to manage your time better. I click embed, and that's now been added into my discussion board area. This is one of the nice things about the IvyLearn platform. It's very multimedia friendly. I can highlight that box and I can make it a little smaller. So I can adjust the size for students. Okay, so I've posted this video about time management. And now I'm going to add a message to my students. So after, I'm a terrible typist, so please ignore that. Reviewing the time management video. Please share how you will manage your time in this course. All right, so now I have given them something to look at. I've given them something to discuss. I can add a file, so if there's something I want to add, maybe a calendar for them to plot out how they're going to use their time management, or maybe even a to-do list or some additional tips on time management, I could add that here using the file. Okay, we want to allow threaded replies, and this is how we let students reply back to the discussion board. This is a new feature. This users must post before seeing replies. So a lot of times in our discussion boards in the past, students would kind of peruse other students' work, kind of get an idea, formulate an idea, and then kind of reuse or rephrase what other students had posted. I can now select users must post before seeing replies. So that forces them into posting an original thought or an original response to this question before they can see what other students have responded. Okay, so I really like that feature. You can enable a podcast feed here. We want this to be a graded discussion board. And then you can also allow liking. That's kind of like the social media, Facebook, thumbs up, thumbs down type of thing. If it's a group work, you could do it here. You could select this as a group decision. We want to make sure that we add the points possible. I want this to display in my grade center. I can do it by points, complete, incomplete, a letter grade, or GPA. Typically, we just go with the default setting of points. I can give it an assignment group, and since I am adding a discussion board, I'm just going to leave this as my assignment group. I could do peer reviews if I wanted to, but in this case, it doesn't necessarily apply. I want to give it a due date. So we'll say it's due on the 16th. And I can also make this available, give it availability dates. So we'll say it'll be available the 9th through the 16th. Okay. All right, once I have created my discussion board, I've made my, my preferences known, I'm going to save and publish. And remember, publish means it makes it available to students. Okay. So you now see that I've created my discussion board topic. And remember, when we set up our profile picture using this account setting over on the left-hand side, which is, again, one of those policy requirements, we're asking all faculty and support staff to create their user profile. It helps bring a personalization, kind of humanizes the technology experience when you have that picture and biography posted. We're also going to be encouraging our students to do this as well. And when you set up that username and profile, your picture, as well as your link to your profile, will show up in the discussion board, in the announcement page, in the grading feedback, and a lot of areas where you're using communication. So you'll see that here I am, and this is, I've posted my original message here, my discussion board topic. You'll see that the topic is locked until May 9th because I set that due date. Okay. Students will reply by just clicking the reply button. Okay, so we've asked them to reply, and they just click post reply. It's very straightforward and easy to use. And again, I would see each student's profile picture and their profile as well. Okay, so that's how we add the discussion board. It's very straightforward and easy to use. Up here at the top, this is the Breadcrumb Trail. It's kind of a navigational tool, so you'll see that we're in the rubric demo conversation or discussion board and the discussions area in this particular course. So if I click on discussions, okay, you'll see that I've just added my discussion. You'll see that it's not available until May 9th, and the due date is May 16th at 11:59. Over here on the right-hand side, I'll see that it's published or unpublished. So if it's a green cloud with a check mark, it means it's published. If it's a black cloud with an X in it, that means it's not published and it's not available to students. You can subscribe to the topic so you would know anytime someone adds information to it. And then over here, you will see that there are no unread replies. And then over on the right-hand side, I can pin this discussion to the very top. So now this is always available at the top of the discussions. I could share this discussion board post to the Commons, which is that large repository for both Ivy Tech faculty, or we could do that to the larger Canvas community. I can also delete it or move it. Okay, so I can move it to different areas. So there's a lot of functionality, and it's very easy to do just by playing around with these settings. I'm going to unpin it because it's not something I really want at the top, unless maybe I'm doing that by week, and I want to pin the most recent discussion at the top of the page. So it looks like we have a couple questions that have come in. Marion asked me, do you need due dates for optional material? I guess it depends on how you're going to use that. If it's something that for extra credit and they have to turn that supplemental materials in by a certain date, then yes, I would add a due date. If it's something that you just want them to review as they're going through the course, maybe not. If you want to make sure it corresponds, if it's a supplemental material that you think will help enhance their learning knowledge base during that particular module, then I would have at least a suggested due date for something to be done. Richard has the question, can we give feedback to students' replies as in Blackboard? Yes. So you can participate in the discussion board, and you can also, when you're doing grading the discussion board, you can also offer student feedback there as well. So yes, the answer to can we give feedback to students' replies as we did in Blackboard? Of course, both participating in the discussion board and then also in grading feedback. Now, a good discussion board, this is not just busy work. This is what I tell all of the online faculty in our certification courses. This is a rich learning environment. This is a chance for you as the instructor to share your expertise. Okay, so read those discussions. Talk about these topics and how it applies to your professional experience, or guide that direction and say, that's a really good point, but have you thought about this? This is a great teaching moment. I love the discussion boards, and oftentimes they get overlooked. But this is a very rich learning environment, and it really does become an interactive discussion when you as the instructor set that example of how to participate. So in a discussion board, we typically have our students post one original thought, so there's one response back to that discussion, and then we ask our students to reply to at least 2 other students. So we really want them to be having that discussion. We want them to be having that rich conversation. Okay, so you need to participate. One of my favorite examples of great discussion boards happens in our fire science department. They use a website, and this website features all kinds of different fires that take place all over the country. And it talks about, what resources were used to put those fires out, what materials, how many people were used, the management, not only the human resource management, but supply management and being able to collaborate with other fire departments. So every once in a while, they'll create a discussion board based on something they've seen on this website. Then they ask our students in the fire science program, how would you handle that? What if you only had a volunteer fire department of 20, and this has hazardous materials, and it involves not only fire, but possible chemical spills? How would you handle that? It really gives them a chance to apply what they're learning in the classroom. In addition, most of our instructors in that program are firefighters, so they can add their life experience. We had a similar situation when I was at such and such fire post. This is how we handled it. This is what I wish we had. This is what I learned from it. So it really can be a great teaching tool. Will the discussion board still show to students to complete after the due date? Well, anytime a student post an assignment, whether it's in the discussion board or they turn in an assignment, a lab assignment, a written document late, it shows up in the Grade Center. Okay, so it notifies you as the instructor that they've posted late, and then it allows you to deduct those points. Now, when I set the availability dates in this particular discussion board, after my due date, which I think was actually the 16th, and I probably should have made that the 17th, this discussion board will no longer be available to students, so they would not be able to post afterwards. If I didn't set that availability date, students could participate at any time, but when I graded that in the Grade Center, it would show me when they posted that information and if it was past the due date. Great question, Vicki. Thank you. Okay. Other questions about discussion boards? Another new feature in the discussion board that we've not had before is when we do the discussion board. So I'm going to go ahead and just open up this demo that we've already created. And I'm going to click Edit. Because another feature that you can have is you can use this little film strip, and when I click that, I can actually record a discussion board post. And you can allow students to reply back through their video channel as well. So if they have a webcam and a computer microphone, you can actually allow students to use this multimedia to have a conversation using video. So kind of powerful. If the desire that you have is to really inspire communication and really have a debate or a conversation, sometimes this new tool is a way for students to be able to do that without having to type out something at great length. Okay, so this is another option in the discussion board. Now, as an instructor, if you do use your webcam at any time or post video at any time, you want to make sure that you're adding a transcript or that there's closed captioning available so our students with accessibility needs can access the content. Okay, but another powerful tool that we can use that's now available to us built right into the content editor. Okay, so let's talk about rubrics. Okay, so you can add rubrics to discussion boards, you can add them to assignments, and there's even this crazy way in the IvyLearn platform that you can add a rubric to a quiz. Although the rubric in the quiz does not allow you to actually grade through the rubric, it's just kind of something that you can look at. So maybe if you have a test that has both multiple choice or multiple answers and then an essay, you could actually post the rubric in the quiz and allows you to grade those essays. So that's something that you can do here. All right, so there's several ways that we can create a rubric. Okay, so maybe ahead of time you're going to use a rubric for all of your discussion board posts. Or if you're a communications instructor, you're going to create a rubric for all of the speeches that your students are going to give. Whatever it is, if you're going to use the rubric multiple times, I would recommend doing that in one central location, which is located here under Outcomes. Okay, so on our course menu, you will see an item called Outcomes. It's grayed out, so this is not available to students. When I click on Outcomes, you'll see that there's Add Outcome Group and Find. Now, we're not going to mess too much with the outcomes, and what outcomes are is they're really objectives. So what am I trying to accomplish as a whole? And there is an objectives committee that are currently working on objectives for whole departments. If you're part of that, you probably are familiar with that. We're still creating and using the outcomes, setting that up for global usage. So if you're part of our English department, I forget what other departments are using this right now, but our team is working together to create those outcomes for you. So that's not really what we want to worry about when we click this outcomes button on our course menu. What we want to do is we want to go over here to the far right-hand side, and anytime you see this little icon with the ... it means that there are more menu items or tools. So when I click on this little icon, the ... you'll see that I can manage rubrics here. So I click Manage Rubrics. You'll see that I've created several rubrics in this demonstration course when I was practicing. But over here on the right-hand side, just like everything that we do when we add something in the IvyLearn platform, you'll see there's this little plus sign, so Add Rubric. So I click the Add Rubric button. Rubrics are a series of criteria that are grading students on a particular project or their quality of work. It kind of defines what the students are doing in the class and what those expectations are. Okay, so by default, this is what it looks like when you open it up. It's going to prompt you to put in a title. Okay, so maybe I would label this Discussion Board Rubric. And I'm going to use that multiple times. So every time I use that and I add it to an assignment, I will change the name to match it, okay? So it's not this, it's kind of the same rubric, but you have to rename it every time you use it. And that way you don't, you don't mess up your master, okay? So if you think about this as a master rubric, this is how we would do that right here. So I could give it a title. Okay. Apparently my computer is frozen here. Okay, so I've given it a title. You'll see here's a list of where I would add all the criteria or criterion, depending on your use. I can select the ratings, so I can give my points possible, and I'll show you how to add additional points. I can also set it up automatically. So maybe I just want this to be worth 3 points or 3 categories, 3 columns. Okay, and I hit enter. Okay, so I'm going to give it, the first thing I want to do is I want to create my criteria. So I'm going to select the pencil. Anytime you see the pencil icon in any of the areas in IvyLearn, this means that you can edit or customize the content. So I'm going to click the little arrow. Okay, and maybe I'm going to call this team building. Click OK. If you want to give it a longer description, you can click View Longer Description, and you can add in a little bit more about what does team building mean. So I would enter that here. Click Update Description, and now that's available here when students click on it. And I said I want this to be worth 3 points. So to edit this full marks thing, I would give this my description. So maybe I'm going to click the Edit button, and I would enter in my description. Okay, and actually I just cut and paste from someone else's rubric. Okay, and then once I've entered that, I click OK. So now I have my first rating. To earn 3 points, the student must have a clear hypothesis. I want to have a column worth 2 points, so here's this little plus button right beside the pencil. When I do that, it adds another column for me. Okay, and I want to edit that column. So again, I click the pencil, I enter in my information, I click OK. Right, so now I have my second column. To earn 2 points, the student has a clear hypothesis, but the research plan is not clear. All right, so I still need one worth 1 point. So I'm going to click the little plus button, and it automatically creates a section worth 1 point. Again, I'm going to click the little edit button. I enter in my information, my description, I click OK. So in this scenario, the hypothesis is confusing and is not tied to research or planning. And then under no marks possible to 0 points, so I'm going to build this out one at a time. It's very simple using that edit button. Okay, so that's how I do that. So here's my criteria, and here's my ratings. To add another criteria, I click the plus criteria button. I can enter another topic. I click OK, and I'm going to go through that process again. So I want to make sure that I have one with 3 points. Whoops, actually. If I have this and I change it, I'm like, oh my gosh, this comes up with 5 points, I can also edit that. So when I click the edit button, I can change my points possible here. And now I'm ready to edit this particular criteria. Okay. Once I have built my criteria, each criteria at a time, each column description at a time, I select Create Rubric. Okay. I have now created my rubric, and I'm ready to use that in my coursework. Okay, so let me jump back into my question area here. Let's see if we have any questions that came up. So Richard asks, can we grade in the rubric? And if so, how? We're going to get to that. Right now, we're just in the building the rubric stage. Yes, so Marion asked me, can you use points to points like 1 to 5? You can. So what I've done is I've built one from 3 to 0. But if I wanted this to be 5 points, I would just I would go back and edit my rubric. Here's the pencil. And I can actually say this is worth 5 points instead. Oops, not 56. I can enter any points possible that I want. Okay, you'll see that once I clicked on the edit button, this made it 5 points. And now I'd want to add, 4 points, 3 points, 2, and a 1. Okay, so now I have a 5-point scale. So Vicki has a great question. Are the rubrics created in the Commons area for each class? So if you search the Commons for a rubric, you're most likely not going to find it. However, if you are using one of the statewide library of courses, and there's a rubric built into the course, that will automatically be in that course that you copy from the Commons. Okay, so if the course is developed with the rubric, it will be in the course that you're downloading. But right now, we do not have any common rubrics created. Oh, okay. I'm sorry, Marianne, I misunderstood your question. So Marianne's giving me a little bit more context. So some instructors want to be able to grade, for example, one rating to be 0 to 5.5, so more of a point range. And the answer is no. The IvyLearn rubric is very straightforward. It's a point for a point. There's no range. But when we go into use, how it's set up, I will tell you it's very easy to use when you're grading, because you just click on the points possible that you want the student to earn, and that automatically populates. Okay, so we've talked about how we can build our rubric here under the Outcomes page. Okay, so if we want to use this rubric over and over again, we want to create a master, and I can do that here in the Outcomes. Again, I click Outcomes from my menu. On the far right-hand side, on the ... meaning there's more menu items, I select Manage Rubrics, and I click plus Add Rubric when I want to create one here. I can also create a rubric in an individual assignment or discussion board. So let me show you how you would do that. When I go into, and again, I can create my assignments through the module, or I can go directly to the assignments link. I'm going to go to the assignment link for our particular purposes, just because this is going to give me the index view, and I can see all the assignments that are currently created in this course. So I'm going to click Assignments. That Assignments menu, you'll notice, is grayed out, so that is not available to students. They're going to access their assignments through the modules, where that content is laid out for them in a sequential learning manner. So let's go down here to, for example, we'll go to our lab activities, okay? So I'm going to select my lab assignment. Okay, I'm going to go into that lab assignment. And I can add my rubric here. So you'll see here's my edit button. Here's where I've created the assignment. It's due here, how many points it's worth. I can also add a rubric to each individual assignment. So click plus rubric. Okay, I can create it again here, or I can find a rubric to add. Now you notice when I've created a rubric within the actual assignment, there are these 3 additional options for us. When you add, anytime you add a rubric, either by creating it new here in the assignment or find a rubric to add to an assignment, you will see these 3 new options. So the first one is, I'll write free-form comments when assessing students. So this just opens up, it gives you an additional comments box when you're creating the rubric. It does take away the automatic grading feature for you, but it is available for you to write free-form comments. There's also a way for you to add comments in any grading rubric, but this allows you a whole new column just to add your thoughts to it. This might be something that you'd want to engage if you are using this in the quizzes, assignment quizzes instead of discussions or assignments. Use this rubric for assignment grading, and yes, we usually want to do that because this allows you to click on whatever the column is and make that available for the grading purposes. All right, so let's, instead of creating our own rubric here, because we've kind of went through that process, let me go ahead and find a rubric. So you'll see that I have a series of rubrics here that I've created. Okay. I can select my rubric demo, or I can use anything that I like. Okay. You'll see that this particular rubric is worth 8 points total. I can also manage my rubrics and go back right into this management, the rubrics page located, takes me back into outcomes. Okay. So let me go back into my assignment. Okay, so we're playing around with our lab assignment here. So I'm going to add a rubric. And again, this is located right here in my assignment. Add rubric. Oh, the third option here, hide score total for assessment results. So you see this total points here. This kind of calculates what the student earns. When you select hide score total for assessment results, that's what it does. It hides this particular item. I don't necessarily recommend that, so I don't usually select that. Okay, so let's select find a rubric. I'm going to select the rubric of my choice. I can kind of get in the preview menu. I can kind of scroll down here what's in this particular rubric. Okay. Once I've made my selection, I'm going to select use this rubric. You'll see that the rubric is automatically added to this assignment page. So I can now see this under the assignments. Okay. The student would also see this rubric, so they know what's expected because it's part of the assignment now. We've created this assignment. Students would see this information. Now this toolbar is unique to us as faculty members, but the student would see this information about what the lab assignment is, the points possible. They would know if it's an assignment for everyone or a specific group of students, and then they would see the rubric in which they're going to be their grade's going to be based on. All right. Now let's go ahead and see what happens when we use the speed grader. And I'm actually going to go back into the rubrics. I'm going to go to the discussion area because we actually have more posts placed in the discussion board in this demo course. So I'm going to go ahead and go to discussions. And again, remember, we can add rubrics to our discussion boards as well. So I'm going to select we'll say the Module 3 discussion board. Okay, you'll see right now I do not have a rubric attached to it. So in the discussion board, to add a rubric, instead of seeing that plus rubric, I come up here to the settings button on the right-hand side of the corner. And this is where I can add rubric. Okay, so I'm either going to do it from my settings, or it will automatically populate as an item to add, as it does in the assignment tool. So I'm going to add a rubric. And again, I can create my own rubric here, or I can find a rubric. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use the rubric that I used for discussion board 1. I'm going to use this rubric. Okay, I can edit this, and this is a new copy. So I want to make sure that now that I'm in a different discussion board, I'm in Module 3, I want to give this a different name. So we're going to call it the Module 3 discussion board. Once I've made that adaptation, I'm going to say I'll use this rubric for assignment grading. This is where I can select that free form comments. This is kind of where I set my options for the rubric. And then update rubric. Okay, now you'll see that leaving the assignment's total points, the rubric's total points is 15. But this discussion board was set up with 20 points. Now I can either change this and change the points possible in my rubric, or I can leave the difference. Okay, or when I'm creating the rubric to begin with, I want to make sure that I have the correct points associated with it. But when I say leave the difference, this allows me to manually update. So even though my rubric is worth 15 points, I might use 5 additional discretionary points on how many posts. That's not part of my current criteria, or whatever that might be. And I click Update Rubric. Okay, so you can have a differentiation in points possible. Okay, but now I've added my rubric to my discussion board post. Okay. All right, so now let's see how we grade things. I'm going to go into do Module 1 discussion board, because I know I have participants who have done that before. So I'm going to go into Module 1 discussion board, and from my menu up here on the top right-hand side, I'm going to enter into Speed Grader. Okay. So now I'm in my discussion board post. So now I can see that this was actually, her submission was late. So remember how we talked about if a student submits something after the due date, it will automatically populate here. So it's telling me the student was late. Okay. I'd actually already graded this, so I can view my rubric. So let's remove this grade. I'm going to review the rubric. Okay, so anytime I've attached a rubric to my discussion board, a quiz, or an assignment, you'll see the button View Rubric. I open that, and unfortunately what I don't like about this is I cannot change the size of my screen, so I have to use these little scroll bars. Okay. All right, so now I go through and I said the discussion board post, she participates 4 to 5 times throughout the week. So I go through my ratings and I just simply click on it. Okay, and I'm clicking on, and you'll see that it's highlighting. Okay. It automatically populates the total on the right-hand side. So I've clicked on each one of those categories. It's now telling me that she's earned 3 out of 3 points, 2 out of 3. It's automatically calculating that for me. So you'll see that she has 11 out of 15 points. I can give her individual feedback on each criteria. So you'll see there's a little feedback button right here for additional comments. So giving the student specific feedback about that criteria, I can click Update Comment, and you'll see now the student would see that there's a comment that's been added. There's a little box that comes around that little area. I can also come down here, and I can also give overall grading feedback. And if you haven't seen this tool before, one of the things I really like is that you can actually do text to speech. So I could give her video feedback here using my webcam. I could add a document, so if I wanted to show her netiquette, for example, I could attach the netiquette document here, and I can also do text to speech. And I love this tool. So I click the little microphone, and I use my computer microphone. I click the record button. Overall, a really great job! Exclamation mark. Please just make sure that you are continuing to use appropriate grammar and mechanics, period. Also, you might want to reference any materials that are from outside of the textbook or your personal experience, period. Okay, so I've now given the student feedback. I click this little button to end that, and you now see my message over here in the overall comments. I can, use punctuation or capitalization that didn't take place in my text-to-speech. And then I click Submit. So now the students, we've now graded the criteria using the rubric, and the student now will see that grade in the Grade Center. Okay, so Marion had a great question. Does this mean we have to develop new rubrics for each discussion board in a course? No. Now, if you'll notice, when I went into my discussion boards, so what I did from the very beginning is I created a master discussion board rubric. Okay, and I did that using the Outcomes button. So I'm going to go to Outcomes. I'm going to select over here on the right-hand side, Manage Rubrics. Okay, and you'll see that I have created Module 1 Discussion Board Introduction, Module 3, and then Module 13. Okay, so I've used the same rubric for 3 different discussion boards. I just relabeled it. Okay, so when I go into my assignment, so I've created my master. When I go over here to my discussion board areas, and I select the discussion that I have not added my rubric to yet. So let's say Module 7, I don't think I've added anything to that. I click Module 7, Discussion Board. Because it's a discussion board, I'm going to add the rubric from my Settings button over on my right-hand side. Add rubric. Okay, and then I select Find a Rubric. When I select Find a Rubric, this allows me to find that discussion board rubric that I've been using over and over again. So I'm going to go ahead and select Module 1 because that's the same thing. This is the same discussion board rubric that I've been using over and over again. Okay, so we can scroll through here. I can take a look at the criteria. Okay, and I'm going to use this rubric. I can also add, you'll notice that the Edit button was available to me up here at the top of the page. I say that and it's not there now, but you can edit this. So I'm going to use this rubric, okay, and then I'm going to edit, okay. So one thing I want to do is I want to change the discussion board. So actually this is called Module 7. I'm going to give it a new name. This is the same discussion board I've used in all of my other discussion board posts. If I need to add an additional criteria for this particular discussion board, I can do that. You scroll down here, I can add another criteria. Okay, so I can customize this. It does not affect the master that I've already created. It just affects this rubric that I'm using for this particular assignment. I want to make sure that I select use this rubric for assignment grading. And I can also select write free-form comments when assessing students, and I'll show you what that looks like. Okay, and now I update the rubric. All right, now again, my rubric is set up for 15 points. The discussion board was set up from 20, so I'm going to say leave different. I've now added this to my rubric. Okay, so I'm going to go from right here from this particular assignment, I'm going to go into my speed grader. Now, I actually do not have any students have posted in 7. If I wanted to see really quickly if anyone had, I would use this pull-down menu, and I could scroll through my whole list of students, and there would be a check mark beside their name if they had participated yet, and they have not, okay? But I could go ahead and view this rubric, okay, and you'll see that here is my, the description, and here is the rating. When you use open comment, you have to give your own rating, okay? You have to manually enter in how many points. So I'm going to give you a 2. Okay, so I've entered in that information. Now, this is pretty cool. You can save this comment for reuse. Okay, so what that means is down here, I can use from a pull-down menu, I can use that message again, over and over again. So a lot of times there are typical things when you're grading a discussion board, the same common feedback that you might want to give someone, and you can use the little feedback menu and select, create your own menu items here using the open comments. Okay, but I also want to make sure that I'm entering my points here. Okay, so this is manual when you have open comments selected on your discussion board. But that's how I would do it. I would use the same discussion board and I would rename it each time. Marion asked, can you use the same rubric over and over again without renaming it? No, not really. It's not recommended because you have a master rubric and you don't want to get that confused with one that you're customizing for each assignment. Okay. It also, when you label it, it makes the students, gives them feedback that the rubric that you're using is unique to that particular assignment. So you definitely want to get in the habit of naming your rubrics to the assignment title. Great question. Vicki asked the question, is there a way to automatically give the student the 15 points rather than go into each area of the rubric and choose? I guess that might defeat the purpose of the rubric because you're telling them what criteria they met or did not meet. And when you click that criteria with the points assigned to it, it automatically calculates that for you. If you just wanted to grade something and give them full points or minimal points, you could probably maybe skip the rubric and just do that with their grading feedback give them the points possible and then tell them why in your grading feedback. The other thing, I suppose, if you wanted to do it that way, Vicki, is if you, under those options, you would choose not to show them the total points out of 15, and then you would go up here manually to the top of this where you enter the grade. And you would just enter in the 15 points there and submit. So I guess you could overwrite it, but I don't think that necessarily gives you the grading feedback that the student might need when you're trying to use a rubric. Great questions. That does take us to the end of the presentation today. I'd be glad to stay on the line and answer any additional questions that you might have. On the GoToWebinar control panel, under handouts, there are very specific how-to instructions on how to use the discussion boards and also how to create rubrics. So I know when you get back to your desk, you're going to be like, how do I do that again? That handout should be very helpful to you on how to do the things that we talked about today in our webinar. Thank you again for attending our IvyLearn workflow series on discussions and rubrics. Have a great day.